So, I've been watching a lot of booktube, and I read a lot of books in April. So, this is an April wrap up. The first book I read this month was A Good Neighborhood by Therese Ann Fowler. This is a book about, in one house, a mom and her son, her son is mixed and she's black, live, and she's a eco professor about like botany professor about trees and stuff, and her name is Valerie and her son's name is Xavier, and Brad Whitman and who is a white family. They moved in the house behind them, and after they move in, Valerie notices her favorite tree is dying, and they have a daughter, and it's his stepdaughter, and she starts to fall in love with Xavier, and it's like an exploration of like race relations and debunking and like purity and the effect it has on young girls, and it was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. It was not what I was expecting. It's very poignant and hard-hitting, and I loved it. So it was a 5-star read. Yeah. The next book I read this month was You Say It First by Katie Kotanugu, which I also gave it 5 stars. It's about a girl who is like very liberal and like politically active. She ends up calling this guy, whose name is Colby, who lives in he has a very different life than Meg, the main character, and she calls him from a call center, and they have this weird first conversation, and then they start talking all the time, and they start to date. I really liked the way the book was structured. They're very different people, but it was really cool to see how they got how their relationship developed and how they got to know each other. I love the way that she writes. Her characters are always flawed and they make mistakes, but you love them anyway. And I think it's very hard to get a reader to connect with characters that sometimes do sucky things. I gave it 5 stars. I think I might actually drop it down to 4 because I sometimes I be rating things too high initially, but I did really, really like it. The next book I read this month was Please Don't Go Before I Get Better by Madison Kuhn. And then I read Almost Home after that as well. I gave Please Don't Go Before I Get Better 4 stars. It was really good. I just didn't connect with it as much as I did her first poetry collection, 18 Years, or Almost Home, which I gave 5 stars. I really liked the way the book was structured. This one was. I borrowed Please Don't Go Before I Get Better from my roommate, so I don't have that with me. But it was National Poetry Month, so I just had to be reading poetry at the beginning of the month. And I love the way she writes, and so if you like poetry, I definitely check this out. The next book I read was Dear Madam President by Jennifer Palmieri, and Jennifer Palmieri worked in the Obama White House and on the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign, and so this book is it's an open letter to the women who will run the world, and it's sort of like a memoir of the campaign. She uses her life stuff too, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was kind of reminiscent of A Room of One's Own. To me, that's what it reminded me of. It's very eye-opening, and I gave it 4 stars. Next book I read was Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I have had this book for a while, and I finally picked it up, and it was very good. If you don't know what this is about, then you live under a rock, and I don't want to summarize it. But I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I was worried because a few months ago I read The Power, and it took me forever to get through, and I was like, I don't want this to like be a dud, you know. I don't know why I thought that it would be a dud, but I did. I really liked the way that this was written, and so I would highly recommend it. The next book I read was another book by Katie Cotonugo, called Fireworks, and I actually only gave this one 3 stars. I felt like the story fell a little flat, and I didn't connect with the characters as much. This is about like a main character who by chance gets like picked to join a band with her best friend. It's set in like 1990s Orlando, Florida, and they like move from a tiny small town to Orlando, and they like live in this hotel, and there's like a relationship, and it just kind of fell flat. I didn't connect with the characters as much as I normally do. The things that were happening, I wasn't like that into, and so I only gave this one 3 stars, but it's still good. The next book I read was A Feast for Crows by George R.R. Martin. I have been reading the Game of Thrones books for like a year now, and the first one I got through pretty quickly. The second one took me half a year to read. The third one was like okay, and everyone hates the fourth one. Everyone is like, this is so dumb, the way he split the fourth and fifth one up is annoying, but I read it very quickly and I loved it. I liked it a lot. I thought that it could, like, there were things that could have been better. I think that instead of having different perspectives of people who were in Dorne or on the Iron Islands, he could have like condensed that part, and instead of giving us like different perspectives, he could have given us one perspective from those locations. But I loved Brienne's chapters. I love Jaime. I think that the books give him a beautiful redemption arc that the show failed to do. And I think that George R.R. Martin is a fantastic writer. So I give that book 4 stars. The next book that I read was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is a thriller mystery. It's a classic whodunit. It's set on a island in Ireland, and I think the best thing about this book is that you know that someone died, but you don't know who from the beginning, and so you're finding out not only who killed the person that died, but actually who died, and all of the perspectives like have a motive. And this was fantastic. I gave it 4 stars apparently, and I loved it. I've been getting into thrillers recently, and this is a very good one. It was my book of the month pick for April, and so I'm very happy. It was like very surprising that I liked it as much as I did. I highly recommend this. The next book I read was also a thriller, and it was Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. This book was so good. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. And I have been thinking about this book since I finished reading it. I love the main character, and I thought that it was very easy to connect with her. And the relationship, the mentor-mentee, familial relationship between the main character, Camille, and her boss, Curry, is one of the best, familial relationships I think I've ever read. The way that they care for each other is, fantastic. And I thought that before I watched the show and saw that the guy that plays Pruitt Herrera in Station 19 played Curry. And so I love this book. I highly recommend it. I thought, I was thoroughly surprised by the ending. Like, I thought that it was going to be somebody else. And yeah, good book. The next book I read was Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood by Trevor Noah. This book was fantastic. I love memoirs, and this one was super great. There are many things in here that I think like are unique to South Africa, but there are some things that he says that apply to can apply to people in America, and like race and like that kind of stuff. That wasn't very eloquent, but I love this. I highly recommend. The way that Noah talks about his mother was, you know, just very good. I really liked everything that he had to say. I read this very quickly, and I gave it 5 stars. I don't know if I already said that, but the next book I read this month was a reread of one of my favorite series by Jenny Han, and that is The Summer I Turned Pretty. You can tell that I've read this book multiple times. It's probably been sat in some water. This is like one of my very, very favorite young adult series. I connect with Belly so much. I love her. And I think the relationships explored in this, and the way that there are flashbacks, like explaining like Belly and like the growth of her over the years, are very good. I think Jenny Han is phenomenal, and I always connect a lot with her characters, and she writes a boy so well. Like, I love Jeremiah, I love Conrad. Belly's brother Steven is great, and it's also a perfect little beach read. Like, I remember reading this and being like, I wish that I could stay at a beach house all the time. So that is this book that I read, and I gave 5 stars, probably because of nostalgia. This is a reread. I've read it many times. I love this book, but I had kind of forgotten how much I loved it. I did read it in like 3 hours because it's that good. The next books that I read this month were Free with Kindle Unlimited Reverse Harem series. I read Their Shifter Princess and Their Shifter Academy by Mae Dawson, I think. And I didn't rate these. I didn't add them to my Goodreads, but I did spend a full day like just reading both series. I have this thing where I really enjoy smutty reverse harem or like romance from Kindle Unlimited. I think that even if the writing is like not great, it's very entertaining and like addictive, and I will read them, like devour them. I just like want to know what happens. And so were these like phenomenal writing? Was it like the epitome of literature? No. Did I enjoy them? Absolutely. They were great. And then the last book that I read this month was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this is a like book about Evelyn Hugo's life, but she's telling it to Monique Grant, who's a magazine writer, and so that she can like publish a biography of her when she dies. And I thought this was fantastic. I devoured it, and this has been on my TBR for a while, and I bought it like this month, and for some reason I wasn't like excited to read it. Like, I had been excited and then I just wasn't, and so when I picked it up, it was like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this. But then I loved it. This might be a spoiler, but the bi-representation in this was fantastic, and it was not like, it was a surprise to me. So I guess that is a spoiler. But I loved this, and I think that it said a lot of important things about bisexuality. And I liked the the look into 1950s Hollywood and growing with Evelyn Hugo, and I gave this 4 stars. It's a new favorite of mine. I'm really happy that I finally read it. I rate books very highly. I probably should work on that. But if I power through something and I really love it, then I am gonna rate it highly. And so I probably had more 4 and 5 star reads than a lot of people that you watch, if you watch any booktube. But I just be loving to read. I read a lot of books this month. How many did I read? 15. I read 15 books this month. I'm making the 2 Reverse Harem series is 1 book each. But if they were each how many books I read, it would be 19 books, but I don't know. They're kind of short. And so I just combined each series. So 15 books, that's a lot of books, and I rated a lot of them highly. But yeah, that was what I read in April. This was very good and fun. I probably sucked at this, but sometimes it just be like that. I really hope that I'm still okay. Yeah. Well, that's it.